Hi, welcome back to Practical Student. In this, what should be the first of 4 videos on this project, we're going to be making the 1997 Ordinary Level Junior Cert project. It's a desk lamp, as you can see there in the picture, and a few parts to be marked out, a few lathe parts and a little bit of electronics. The only design part you had in this project was the battery holder, which had to be designed and attached. And also what I'm going to change in this, there's no switch in the design, so we're going to put a switch in the middle here, a toggle switch. In this first video we're going to do the marking out of the 4 sheet parts. This is the base plate made from 5mm acrylic, not too difficult. This part here is the back, again 3mm acrylic in this stage. This piece is the lamp shield, that's probably not the right word for it. What do they call it? The shade. Call it shade, made out of aluminium or brass. I'm going to make it from aluminium. Difficult piece to bend, but again we'll deal with that. And finally the connecting piece between the back piece and the base plate. Now all of those I'm going to do marking out in one video, and I'll have timestamps in so that you can jump to whichever one you're interested in. In the second video, I'm going to do the lathe pieces, this one, this, and the battery holder itself, and all of those will be in their own video. And the third video should be drilling, filing, shaping the different parts as they need to be, and then the final video will be getting back to assembling and doing any decorative or tidy up work. And the electronics, of course. So let's get started. Okay, so before I start marking out the pieces, I want to check that I've got square corners and straight edges that I can work from accurately. Now the brass and the aluminium pieces I know are already square. I can check with a T-square if I want to, but I cut them on the shears, and when I was cutting them I made sure they were square. So nothing has to be done on these pieces, except I am going to colour them in with a permanent marker just to make the marking lines stand out a bit more in video. These pieces, Perspex pieces, are cut on a bandsaw, so they're not going to be as accurate. I always check the edges to see if I've got any piece off the side of the sheet, which is usually smooth and straight. When I check the black piece, the base piece, I've got one smooth side. So now I want to identify whether the side on the left of it or the side on the right of it, which is totally wrong around, the side on the left and the side on the right, is square with that, or which one is best. There's quite a curve in that there. You can just about see it on the video. And if I check the other side, then I can see that that's slightly off as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a very thin line close to the edge on this side, which is slightly better, and file down to that line, so that that piece, I know I will have a good right angle here. The second piece, I don't have any straight edges, or cut edges off the pieces off the edge, so I want to identify which corner is the best. And when I look at these corners, I find that they're all quite, these two are quite good. Which one didn't I check? That one there. So I'm actually going to go for this corner. So I'm going to have this as my bottom left corner, and this piece is going to be my bottom right. So I'm going to file those two, just smooth, and monitor it with the T-square to make sure that I don't go over 90 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to do this and fast forward now, so you'll be able to watch nice and quickly. Okay, so marking out part 1, the base. It's a little bit tricky in that it's not straight. You're basically not working off an edge as you're looking at in the drawing, but it makes little difference. So the first thing I'm leaving the covers on the perspex as well to stop the surfaces getting scratched. So I like to use a pen, which presents problems when you get to radii. Okay, so for that I have a compass and a pen in that as well. So we're going to look for corners and centers. They give us the map basically around the piece. So this is going to be my bottom corner here. So on the drawing I'm just putting a little extra mind myself. And we can see from here and here that all of the edges of this square are 90. Okay, so from this corner I'm going to measure 90 in both directions. I'm using my finger here to determine when the ruler is at the edge of the piece, and I'm going to mark 90 there, that side, and I'm going to mark it up the side here as well. I'm going to T-square both of those lines across to meet each other. Anything outside of those lines is waste because they're the edge lines. I find it sometimes just to hash the area that is going to be waste to remind yourself that you're not using it anymore and therefore no measurements should be taken from those edges. Okay, so we have 2 square corners here and here, which is fine, we've got those already. We've got 2 radii or fillets here and here. If you want to get a fillet, basically from the corner you need to come down the radius and in the radius. So the radius in this case is 15. So I'm going to measure down 15 millimeters, mark that, T-square a line partially across the piece, and measure 15 millimeters in from the edge. That should be the centre for this curve here. And on the other side the radius is 5, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to measure 5 millimeters from the line in this case, put a mark, T-square that mark up a little way, and then measure 5 millimeters up the line. So we now should have the centres for these 2 curves. So I'm going to set my compass in this case to the dimensions for each curve. So the 15 one is going to be easier to do. Now I always find it very difficult to start measuring with a compass or dividers from the edge of the ruler because you can slip off it. I usually start at 10 and then add the dimension to it, which in this case is 15. 10 plus 15 is 25. So I set my dividers, or in this case compass, to 25. And now I try and draw as accurately as possible. Oops, I just nudged that closed by holding it in the wrong position. There we go, 25. I'm going to hold it at the top now so that I'm less likely to nudge the part in. And this pen is a different colour because I couldn't find a red pen that would fit. So we have 15 on that side and we need 5 on the other. Now 5 and these small holes are very difficult to do. If you have a circle template, that might help. Otherwise, it's just a bit of practice and persistence. So we have the little curve there. So hopefully we can see that so far. That's where we are. We now have one final hole to get in the middle. According to our drawing, it is 60 millimeters from that corner to that corner. So our best bet is just to draw a line straight across from the corner here to the corner here. And we're going to measure 60 millimeters across from there. I wonder if it's in the centre. We can find out quite easily, but that's 60 millimeters across, and if we join up the corners this way, we see that it's actually not in the center. So we were right to stick with measurements. That essentially is that part marked out. We have a hole to drill here, which I'll talk about in the next video, because we don't drill a 5, it says M5. And all we have to do then, file the corners and get rid of the excess material. Part 1 marked out. Okay, this is the marking out of part 2. We're making it from 3mm acrylic or perspex, red in this case. A few little things that are different in marking this out. We didn't need a second side that was square to this side. Once the base was wide enough and smooth, we were fine. We do need a center line up the middle. It helps us with the location of this hole and this top edge. And we also need a bottom corner. Once we have those two, we can get started. So from the bottom left corner, it's 30 millimeters into the center line. So we're going to do that first. So again, lining up my piece using my finger to tell if they're level. I'm going to mark 30 and T-square line vertically. Now I'm not going to use the T-square like this where most of the handle is protruding. That allows you to turn it accidentally that way. So I'm going to bring as much of the handle or the stock of the T-square into contact with the work and T-square it up there. So we have our vertical line. Now we have a decision how we want to go about this. I'm going to go for drawing the outline first. It isn't important how you mark any of these out, because there are multiple ways to do it. So, excuse me, the height in total is 110, so I'm going to go up 110 and T-square line across, and this is basically why we have the side done already here. So 110 is quite close to the top in this piece. T-square that across, we don't need to go the whole way. And the drawing tells us that at the top, from corner to corner here, is 22 millimeters. Halfway line, 11 either side. I'm going to put 11 on the center line and mark the end of the ruler, and 22 millimeters on this side. We can now join both of those points, one of them back to here, and I should have marked 30 millimeters over from this as well. I'm going to mark 60 from here to give me the end point on the other side. There we go. We can now join these up. So we have the basic outline of our piece. Now, we have fillets up here that are radius 5, and we have a slightly different situation. We know that the distance here is 5, but the distance here should be perpendicular to that line, if we want to be really accurate about it. So first of all, I'm going to measure down 5 millimeters, and T-square line across. So we know that the two centres are on this line somewhere, but they're also 5 millimeters away from here. Now, the circle is so small you probably will get away with just measuring in 5. I don't see that there'll be a major issue which you couldn't fix when you're filing. If you want to be 100% accurate and do a parallel line to this, which I'll do one side of each. So I'm just going to measure on the left hand side here 5 straight in. We'll see how this goes. See if you're happy enough with actually. So that's 5 in. And to do it, excuse me, to do it accurately, use the end of the ruler, make sure it's lining up with this line here and mark 5 millimeters in. Go down to the other end somewhere, do the same thing, lining the edge of the ruler up with the line and mark 5 millimeters. Now the further away you can get these points, the more accurate it'll be. Line those up. We should be getting a line that's 5 millimeters away from the original line and parallel. And that's where it crosses the top line. Now if I actually measure that now, it's a tiny fraction over 5. It's not, I'd say it's about 5 1/4 millimeters. So I don't think we're really going to notice the difference. I have my compass already set to 5 millimeters from the previous marking out, and again I have to try and delicately do a little curve here. And on the other side. And there we have the part marked out. More or less, that's the whole edge. We now have 3 holes to mark out for. So we have 2 holes here on the bottom. They're 20 millimeters from the center line out and 10 millimeters up. And when we're drilling them, we'll be drilling them 5.5. So I'm going to measure up 10. Let's do the center line. Why not? T-square that line across. And now we want to measure 20 millimeters from the center line out in both directions. So I'm going to put 20 on the center line, and I'm going to mark 40 on this side and the end of the ruler on the other side. So we have the locations for our 2 holes down there. And now we have to mark out for this hole. Now it says it's 15 down from the top, so we can measure it straight down 15, or if you like doing a little bit of maths, if it's 110 from the top, from the bottom to the top, minus 15 is 95 up. I'm going to measure 15 down. And there we go. So that's that piece marked out as well. We can now drill a 12 millimeter hole. I'll be doing that and these other 2 in the next video. Also, you'll notice there's an 80-degree angle on the bottom of this piece. This is so that it tilts slightly away when it's attached, and we'll be dealing with that in the video when we're manufacturing the parts. Now, this is the marking out of part 4, and at first glance the drawing might look a bit unusual. We have this dark outline section here, which is actually the part when it's folded into its circular shape, like you can see here. And this dotted section is not the same shape. This is what it looks like when it's actually out flat, and that's the information that we need. That's why all the dimensions are up here and there are none down here. So what I'm actually going to do is turn the piece around, or the drawing around, and mark it in this fashion here. Now, very important here is the center line. We have the center of this big curve. There's a tangent here to this curve and a tangent across to this curve. So we need to identify the center here, here and here. Once my piece is big enough, I don't mind where the center is. So I'm actually going to measure it. It's 126, which is 63 millimeters would be the halfway point. So I'm going to mark that and T-square a line up. And because this is so thin, 1 millimeter, you need to pick it up when you use the T-square on it. Can't do it down in the bench because there would be too much of a gap between the bench and the blade. So I have a line drawn up here. This first center is 45 millimeters from the base up. So I'm going to measure up 45 millimeters. Mark that. And I'm gently going to punch the material, if I can find, oh, there's my punch. Gently going to punch it at that point so that the dividers doesn't slip. You don't want to punch too hard because you don't want to make too much of a mark through this side. The radius here is 35, so I'm going to set my dividers to 35 millimeters. Again, I'm going to start at 10 which will take me out to 45 if I want 35 between the points. And I'm going to draw a more than half circle. So from about here, I'm going to come all the way around, and I'm going to turn the piece as I do it. Much easier than trying to break your wrist turning it. Okay, so the next circle I'm going to look at, next easiest one I suppose to find, is this one over here. And the drawing tells me it's out 55, it's on that line, so I'm going to do that first. Measure from the centre line out 55, mark it, T-square that up, and I'm going to do the same on the other side, measure 55 over, mark it, and T-square a line up partially. So I know my centres are on that line. If I look at the drawing, it tells me that the radius here is 7.5 for that circle. So I need to come up those lines, 7.5, to find the centre. So I'm doing this by eye, trying to find halfway between 7 and 8, mark it. And I could transfer it with the T-square, or I can just measure it again on the other one. Again, I'm going to punch both points gently. Now I'm going to change my dividers to 7.5 millimeters. Starting at 10, I need to go to 17.5. And I'm going to draw two semicircles here. And again, I like to turn the piece rather than turn my wrist. I find that gets better results. So we have the two semicircles at the end. The next circles that are important, because from this circle there's a tangent straight across to this circle here. Now this one is 36 from the centre out, and then it's a specific distance of 20 up. So that means that this is not a horizontal line, because we know that from here to here is 18, and if from there to there is 20, 20 minus 5 is 15, so this is actually sloping down, which isn't very obvious from the drawing. So I'm going to measure out 36 from both sides of the centre line. Mark it. T-square those lines up a reasonable distance. I'm going to do that on the other side. If I can see where did I put my 36? I have to double check. Okay, that'll do it. And hopefully that's apparent on the drawing. And I'm now going to measure up 20 on both of those lines. Punching, because I'm going to be using the dividers in metal. You may have remembered that I didn't use a punch on the perspex or acrylic, and that's because you'll crack it if you do. There are some plastics that you can, perspex is not one of them. So 5 millimeters on my dividers this time. Started at 20, went to 25, same difference. And I'm going to draw, that isn't, I'm going to draw a circle of that sort of orientation, and again over here. Right, so we've got our 3 circles. Hopefully we can see this now. Okay, and we need to draw tangents between the different circles to get the line here and the line here. So there are ways to actually do this using what you might learn in technical graphics if you do that, but we're going to judge by eye. You get reasonable results. So a tangent just touches a circle at one point. So you have to line up your ruler carefully and draw it in. And we're going to do the same on the other side. So basically you have to imagine a line that's just glancing off both in between both circles. And there we go. Okay. So what do we have left to do? We have a line here, a bend line. That's important. We'll need that because that's where this bend occurs. And we have the mark already for the hole that we're going to drill. So it's just this final line to mark, which is 46 millimeters from the center line. So I'm marking 46 here. And then 46 the other direction. So I have 46 at the center line and I can mark the end of the ruler. T-square those lines up. And I'm going to dash these lines so that they stand out as being different when I come to bend it later on. And there we go. So we have our bend lines here, and we have the outline of our shape. And that's that part marked out, which is probably the hardest of the four parts to mark out. Okay, on to the last piece. Okay, so this is part number 4 of the lamp from 1997. The drawing is slightly different. It doesn't show you what the flat piece looks like, but it should be pretty obvious, especially if you look at here, that we have this kind of trapezoid section here and then a semicircle at the other. I'm going to start marking this one out from the top for a change. Again, the center line is very important because that gives us the center of this curve and the center of the hole will be on it. And we have a tiny bit of maths to do and we're good. So, I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to measure over and find half of the distance of the piece. So the piece in total is 63 and a bit millimeters, so 31.5 should be close enough to halfway that it doesn't make any huge difference. 31.5. I'm going to T-square a line there. Again, this is thin metal, so you need to pick it up. This first section, this top piece is 20 millimeters down. So I'm going to measure down 20 and do a line straight across. At the top it's 53 wide, and at the bottom we know it's the same as the radius here, so it's 60 wide. So I'm going to measure 30 on either side here. Actually, I'm not going to do that because I found a better way, thought of a better way to do it. The top it's 53, so we need half of 53. Half of 50 is 25, half of 3 is 1.5, so 26.5 is the distance at the top. So I'm going to mark I have 26.5 placed on the centre line here. I'm going to mark the end of the ruler and I'm going to mark 53. If I punch the centre, I'll be able to draw the circle. And the circle radius is 30 millimeters. So I'm going to start at 10 and go to 40. And draw this curve. And that gives me the points to join up here and here. And that's why I didn't bother measuring the 30 out on either side. So I'm going to mark this carefully. And on the other side. So we have the basic outline of the shape. The reason I started at the top is because if I'd started at the bottom, I would have had to measure up 30 here. And then when I went to draw the curve, if it wasn't perfectly accurate, the curve may have gone just over, slightly over the line, and that's not ideal. Now I have 3 holes to mark out for. This one is 15 down from the centre line. So that's the hole in the base. So I'm going to start at 60 and go to 75, which is 15 in difference. I'm going to punch that, because I'm going to drill a hole in it later on. And these two are 20 from the centre line, and according to the drawing here, 10 from the centre, the line going this way. So measuring up 10, 2 square line across, and then measure 20 millimeters out from the centre line in both directions. Just going to put 80 on the centre line, mark 100 this side, 20 more than 80, and 20 less than 80 is 60. And again, I'm going to punch these because I'm going to drill them later on. And that's it, last part marked out. So we now have all 4 parts. I'll just give you a closer look at that. Is it done? So we now have all 4 parts marked out that we need to do that with. So the next video now is going to have me drilling those, cutting off excess material, filing them, and then bending them as they need to be bent. Sorry, that will be the 3rd video. The 2nd video is going to be the lathe pieces.